In the first part of this lecture, I described my mystical encounter with the Logos, that universal pattern of creation, which I termed the Pentadic matrix. It was this revelatory experience that would transform my understanding of the world around me, as I thereafter viewed the cosmos as a vast set of variations on a limited number of universal themes. This pattern or matrix has been identified historically as the Logos, or the ultimate reason, order, or word of creation. But at the time of my revelatory experience, I was not familiar with such a notion of the Logos, nor its importance to the Western mystery tradition and such great thinkers as Pythagoras, Plato, Moses, Pseudo-Dionysius, Berma, and Blake. From that epiphanal point forward in my life, the Pentadic matrix became the lens through which I viewed the world. Indeed, I started seeing this fivefold Logos pattern in all things, from social and historical constructs, to literary and artistic creations, to ancient myth and sacred literature. Moreover, as I began to discern this pattern in the works of many of history's greatest mystics, artists, and philosophers, each discovery served as a smaller revelation and helped confirm the significance and verity of my own inner experience. I came to learn how the Hermetic or Western mystery traditions promulgated this hidden wisdom and the doctrine of the universal Logos, often communicated by means of allegorical or symbolic language. As an example of this analogical method, the Renaissance philosopher Pico della Mirandola said of Plato that he concealed his doctrines beneath coverings of allegory, veils of myth, mathematical images, and unintelligible signs of fugitive meaning. I was profoundly struck by how this chain of hidden wisdom wove its way through the ages, like Ariadne's golden thread, leading one to the deeper core of creation. This notion of an unbroken procession of universal Hermetic wisdom was promulgated in the Florentine Platonic Academy, founded by the Renaissance philosopher Marsilio Ficino, which influenced many artists and thinkers thereafter. The following brief examples show how this logoic conception has streamed through some of the greatest minds in Western civilization, and particularly through the Platonic and Western esoteric traditions. These traditions and their symbolic methods are examined in detail in my 7 Cosmologos lectures, while the relationship between the teachings of these authors and the nature of the Pentadic matrix may be found in my book, The Illuminated Word, Cosmogenesis and the Symbolic Keys to Universal Understanding. We began the first part of this presentation of the Pentadic matrix with an homage to the Logos found in the golden verses of Pythagoras. Reflecting the original teachings of Pythagoras and his fourfold logoic model, it is there proclaimed, "Hail, holy Tetrad, symbol immense and pure, source of nature and model of the gods." Similarly, Plato here exalts the Logos as the founding pattern of creation. The triangular lambda figure has been used to explain Plato's scheme of mathematical cosmic creation, which echoes the spirit of Pythagoras' tenfold tetractys. The Greek Ionian philosopher Heraclitus also recognized the central significance of the Logos as the founding creative principle. Here he acknowledges the subtle elusiveness of this ultimate idea, but emphasizes that all things happen according to this universal reason, or Logos. The classic Kabbalistic work, the Zohar, acknowledges Moses' great revelation concerning the name of God, and identifies the logoic tetragrammaton as the ultimate creational and salvational principle. Thus is it written, "When the world was created, it was the supernal letters of the tetragrammaton that brought into being all the works of the lower world, literally after their own pattern. Hence, whoever has a knowledge of them and is observant of them is beloved both on high and below." The Logos as the tetragrammaton was symbolized in the four animals, or zoas, of the divine chariot that transported the prophet Ezekiel into the heavens. This fourfold vision formed the basis of early Kabbalistic Merkaba mysticism. As shown in this illustration that I made for my book, The Illuminated Word, the Gospel of John opens with an homage to the Logos Word, with the well-known phrase, "In principio erat verbum," or "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Another allusion to the Logos is found in John's description of the four divine animals which surround the throne of God. The lion of the first fiery principle, the eagle of the watery scorpioic second principle, the angel or man of the pentadic aerial third principle, and the bull of the earthen fourth. The 2nd century writings of the Corpus Hermeticum tell of the initiate Hermes Trismegistus' encounter with the Logos. This description is akin to my own experience, as well as that of Jacob Boehme. Here Hermes' revelation is of the great Pomander, who is the ultimate mind, idea, and logos, which is to say, the first word of creation. As Hermes described his revelation, "In an instant all things were opened to me, and I saw an infinite sight. All things were become light. Then from that light a certain holy word joined itself unto nature." Thus did Hermes receive an instantaneous illumination, where all things became known, in the name of the Logos, or Holy Word. Pseudo-Dionysius here identifies God as the Logos, as he forecontains the causes of all things unitively in himself, and because he permeates all things, reaching to the end of all things, and more especially because the divine Word is simple beyond all simplicity, and is above all things according to its superessential and absolute nature. The great Spanish mystic Raymond Lull received his own revelation of the Logos when meditating at the top of Mount Ronda. He termed the primal inclinations of the Logos as the universal reasons or attributes. He developed an alphabetical, quasi-mathematical symbolic system to explain his universal conceptions, as represented in this illustration I created for the Illuminated Word. Dante's description of his ascent to the heart of paradise resonates with the idealist and numerical principles of the Logos. Not surprisingly, Dante's conception of love, divine wisdom, and mystical ascent was influenced by Platonic and Hermetic thought. Also influenced by the Platonic notions found in Ficino's teaching, we find in certain works of Botticelli and Durer those cosmic harmonies and corresponding relationships which reside in the Logos, as well as the blueprints for spiritual ascent. Like Raymond Lull, the Elizabethan philosopher John Dee created an original symbolic language to describe the inner operations of the Logos, expressed in his figure of the hieroglyphic monad. There he declared that this doctrine is not mythical, but mystical and arcane, just as the Logos of the creative universe works by rules so that man, godly minded and born of God, may learn by straightforward work and by theological and mystical language. Jacob Boehme thus explained the relationship between the material world and the greater ideational realm that lies within. The outward world is expressed out of the inward, through the moving of the eternal speaking word. This statement further reminds me of Plato's comment, "Time is the moving image of eternity," wherein time refers to the ever-changing physical realm, while eternity is defined by the all-determinative, unchanging essence of the Logos. As indicated by this quote, the German philosopher Leibniz, who was influenced by the work of Raymond Lull, as well as Pythagoreanism and the Kabbalah, sought to discover a universal symbolic or mathematical language, finding what he called a truly philosophic writing, in which the ideas were reduced to a kind of alphabet of human thought. Such an aspiration for a root symbolic language is reflected in his mathematical formulation of calculus, as well as in his metaphysical treatise Monadology. At the time of my encounter with the Pentadic matrix, I was reading the works of Leibniz and Spinoza, which may have subconsciously contributed to my formulation of the symbolic and axiomatic or mathematical elements of my grand schema. William Blake's fourfold cosmology was embodied in his mythical pantheon of Urizen, Urthona, Luva, and Tharmas, as portrayed in his illuminated prophetic books. He thus experienced the primal Logos in terms of the four living creatures, chariots of humanity, divine, incomprehensible, redounded from their tongues in thunderous majesty, in visions. Upon reading the opening words of the third chapter of Milton's Paradise Lost, known as the Apostrophe to Light, I was struck by the correspondences between his poetry and certain cosmological or logoic models. There he proclaimed, "Hail, holy light, offspring of heaven firstborn, or of the eternal, co-eternal beam, bright effluence of bright essence increate." I was later pleased to learn that Milton had been influenced by the Platonic tradition, which was strong at his Cambridge University. Thus, in his early poem, Il Penseroso, we hear echoes of Platonism and the Corpus Hermeticum. Or let my lamp at midnight hour be seen in some lofty tower, where I may oft outwatch the bear with thrice great Hermes, or unsphere the spirit of Plato, to unfold what worlds or what vast regions hold. I was also surprised to discover that the Romantic poet and philosopher Samuel Taylor Coleridge had devised his own fivefold metaphysical scheme, which he termed his logosophic model. Coleridge thus declared, "All things in which the temporal is concerned may be reduced to a pentad." He further stated, "The Logos is antecedent to all that has come into existence, the eldest and most embracing of created things." I later found in many of the 19th century symbolist poets and artists a similar aspiration to penetrate into the realm of first ideas. The poet, painter, and polemicist Jean Delville, who is influenced by Platonic and theosophical thought, bears witness to his mystic orientation in such paintings as the School of Plato, as seen here, and the following paintings, Orpheus and the Angel of Splendor. For Delville, the mission of art is to penetrate the mystery and hidden meaning in the forms of the visible world, and to cause man to perceive the essential reality of things. Such devotion to the ideal in art led the artist Vasily Kandinsky, who began as a symbolist painter, to the innovative freedom and power of abstract art. Kandinsky also had early ties to theosophical and Hermetic thought. Thus he proclaimed, "Consciously or unconsciously, artists are obeying Socrates' command, know thyself." In his Symbolist Manifesto concerning the spiritual in art, Kandinsky proclaims that art must be directed to the improvement and refinement of the human soul, to, in fact, the raising of the spiritual triangle, which is to say, to the discovery of the one Logos sublime. In keeping with our modern abstract age, the grand schema and pentadic matrix model provide a form of unified field theory and metaphysics. Using universalist, symbolist, and relativistic principles to illuminate the cosmological work of the world's idealists, philosophers, mythologists, and mystics. The following concluding thoughts on the revelation of the pentadic matrix have been taken from my book, Mysteries of the Christos, which examines the nature of the Logos in terms of Gnostic Christianity, world religions, art, literature, and philosophy. The Logos is the secret seed of all creation. The matrix Logos is the ceaseless font from which all life and form issue. The Logos, or pentadic matrix, is the first principle of cosmic formation. The Logos is the singular seed of creation, from which all forms are derived. Through the endless repetition of this primal fivefold imprint, the pressing of this divine seal upon the fabric of matter, the unmanifest one becomes complete, fulfilled, and self-realized.